It's 4 o'clock on a Monday, and you know what that means. It's time for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live, all the way from California. This week starring special guest star, Mr. Peter Malik. Yeah. Welcome.
Thank you.
As I was doing that, I was watching my levels thinking they're probably too hot. So sorry about that if
That's right.
I was distorting like crazy.
Yeah, we have a pass on the video end, but the audio you got to get right.
I know. Absolutely. Okay, there is the chat room. Hello, everybody. Anyway, I'm really excited to have Peter here. He and I are kindred spirits. We just met like a year or so ago, or at the Road Rally in 2014 or shortly before. And as we got to know each other, which was largely on his last visit here to Taxi TV, we found that we had many, many things in common. One big difference is he is still actively recording stuff and has his hands very dirty all the time, as opposed to me, an old fart who would only know how to use 2-inch tape machines. And,
Come on, really?
Seriously? I don't think I... Oh, that's not true. I can't say that I've never done a session with Pro Tools, but yeah, I'm a 2-inch guy because that's what I know.
That's cool.
Yeah. I mean, sounds good, but, you know, makes editing a little harder and a lot of other stuff. Anyway... Peter was at the Road Rally. They were there the year before up on the balcony. This year they moved downstairs. And
with Westlake Pro.
Westlake Pro. And as I said in the email that went out today, Westlake Pro was started by people who used to be with West LA Music, which was for many, many years kind of a standard at the Road Rally. And people loved him. So we're really glad to have Westlake Pro back. And he's a gearhead like you guys. And one of the things that we often talk about is the chasm of people that are afraid to get started with a home studio. Even people who have like GarageBand. I'm pointing at my computer as if you can see it, but you know, they're stifled by tech, and so. I asked Peter just to do 3 simple things today. One is we're going to take your questions about anything and everything in a little while. And don't let us forget, we've got some stuff to give away later in the show. But I asked Peter to cover if he were going to start a home studio as like an acoustic guitar player or just a keyboard player, something very simple that actually sounds good and works and is not going to scare people. Mm-hmm. Because I know so many people, a lot of our viewers, it's like, geez, you know, I'm old school. What do I get? So let's start with the beginner setup. If you were starting all over and you really didn't know anything about much of anything, what would you start out with gear-wise, and then how would you learn how to use it?
Well, you know what? I'm going to start with telling you how I did start out, which was the absolute wrong way to start out.
Interesting.
And I put together my first digital recording rig in 2000.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm surprised. I would have thought you would have been more ahead of the curve, but okay.
No. I sort of came to, I was like a, you know, road warrior guitar player.
Okay.
And I came to this end of the business later in life.
All right.
But I tried to put together on a PC. And, you know, by basically at the time going online and trying to figure out what I could afford.
Yeah.
And it was just an unmitigated disaster.
You know? In what way?
Well, it didn't work.
That way.
You know, it's pretty simple, you know. And I think to be fully transparent, I got a cracked version of Cubase.
Okay.
And I can't remember what the interface was, but I think, the point, the salient point is that I tried to do it on a PC. And so that would be my first recommendation, that even though computers have become more powerful, you know, the problem with putting something together on a PC-based system is the same now as it was then, which is that a PC has components from, you know, 1,000 different manufacturers. You know, there's 1,000 different video cards, there's 1,000 different motherboards, and they're all pretty much the same, but not the same enough to to be solid recording,
Right.
platforms.
So in short, what you're saying is buy a Mac.
Buy a Mac, right? Something, or I'd even say you could do it on an iPad
Really?
to start with, if you really wanted to. I mean, there's some great software packages even on iPhone, but iPad, I think you need a little bit more real estate, to get around. There's a program called Aria, which I think it supports 16 or 24 tracks of audio.
On an iPad.
Yeah. And so, if I were starting out right now and we're on a budget, that might be the way I'd go. Is I'd spend $500 on an iPad.
Yeah.
And
would you beef up to get one with a lot of memory, just because do you need a lot of memory to run Aria?
Well, I mean, I don't think you have any options on actual system memory. You have options on storage, right?
Right,
yeah.
But I mean,
I definitely would want some storage.
All right.
And then, I mean, there's some really cool. Motu just came out with a interface called a microbook. And you could use it to record into a computer, but you could also use it to record into an iPad with like a camera kit,
So it just plugs in. I mean, is it like something that the iPad sits in, or is it just a little, plug-in interface?
No, it's just a plug-in. It's the microbook is just a box.
Okay.
It's like a number of interfaces, but it's something you could basically put in your pocket if you have a fairly large pocket, and take it along with you.
And what does that cost?
I think the street price is like $250.
Okay.
And I mean, there are cheaper options. I mean, there are like Steinberg, who does Cubase, has an interface. I think it's the UR22, which is, I don't know, 150, 100. I hope I'm right. 150, 125. I think you can get it for.
All right. So he's guessing, but an educated guess on the price.
Educated guess, yeah.
All right.
I mean, it depends upon what you want to do. If you just want to get your feet wet, there's some really inexpensive options. If you're wanting to pitch the stuff, you want a little bit better sound quality, right?
Yeah, well, put it this way. Everybody always wants to put their best foot forward and send out stuff that sounds great. We get Taxi members that are like, holy crap, I can't believe they want MP3s. Look, for most of the reality show stuff that gets used in the shows, I think a lot of that is probably high-res MP3.
It may be.
And most of it is mixed so low in many situations, especially... I'm trying to think of a good example. Somebody walks into a bar and there's something playing off in the distance and it's a background source cue.
Yeah.
Nobody at home is ever going to be able to say, that's a WAV file or that's an MP3. But musicians being musicians, and everybody wants to put their best foot forward. Yes, sound quality does matter. I don't think that all music supervisors could tell the difference or require it, but let's assume that you should.
I think in order to get your foot, I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. Yeah. I had a couple placements of a record I did in 1998 and 1999, and really decent placements on some ABC show. I can't remember what it is. Like about a year ago, and I went to watch the show, and I couldn't hear it. I got paid for it. It was there. I couldn't hear it.
Yeah. I completely understand that. I think we hear that from a lot of our members on the forum that say, I had a placement and I could barely hear it. So,
but somebody's going to hear it in order for it to get chosen, though, right? I mean, that's kind of the point.
If there are two pieces of music that are both equally appropriate for the scene in every possible way, and one sounds better than the other, I think the better sounding one will get chosen. If one of them is an A-plus fit emotionally, melodically, for the scene, but the sound quality is not as spectacularly good as something that's a B-plus piece of music, they'll go with the A-plus music with the less good sound quality most of the time. That's my personal opinion, but then again, if it's like a featured upfront use, let's say it's in I'm brain dead. A montage. At the end of a Grey's Anatomy episode, the music is going to be full up and very loud, and they're going to want that to sound great. So, you don't want to submit bad sounding stuff.
Yeah, and basically you're looking at, the chain that you go through, which is what mic, preamp, converter into the computer.
Yeah.
And each one becomes less important as you go down the chain. So the mic is the main place you want to spend your money on.
And the mixing, frankly, you could have great equipment and not have a good sense of how things should be balanced and totally blow your deal, by making something too bass heavy or too top endy.
Yeah.
So
I walked into I can't remember what the thing was in the main ballroom at the convention.
Right.
And but you were playing some
Yeah.
pieces by Taxi members, and there was one particular, and I wish I'd remember who it was, but the content of it was spectacular.
Yeah.
And the mix wasn't. The mix was kind of a deal killer, and that's kind of like, you got to look at that. If you want to be in the game, you got to figure out how to get over that next heap. And I think that everybody on the panel actually said, like, "Wow, I really like that song."
But
yeah.
We had that a lot. I've got to say, for those of you who were at the rally, you probably noticed it as well, that we had several comments coming from panelists this year about vocals being too low. And at some point, I asked, and I said, could it be the stage monitoring that they were hearing, which, of course, is never optimal. We actually lowered the monitors so they were head high and blowing right at them versus up a little higher. But everybody agreed that it wasn't the monitoring, it was just the vocals were too low in a lot of the mixes. That I think people get shy about their vocals when they're the ones singing it.
Yeah, that could be.
It's a point of insecurity for a lot of people. So, okay, we've covered the device could be an iPad, or it could be a MacBook Pro, or it could be a desktop computer.
And depending upon what you want to do, I mean, it could be an old MacBook.
Yeah.
For that matter, I mean, if you're only wanting to record a vocal or a vocal and guitar, or 2 tracks at most at a time, you don't need a ton of firepower,
The laptop I'm using right now is like a 5 or 6 year old MacBook Pro. I happened to buy a really beefy one at the time, so it's got an i7 chip in it, and I think I've got 8 gigs of RAM in it, and maybe a terabyte hard drive.
Yeah.
So it's still beefy by today's standard and would work.
I mean, the one thing you want to look at, you buy your MacBook, is spend an extra $50 and get a 7,500 RPM hard disk.
Yeah.
And there's little things like that are really cheap but make a huge amount of difference.
I've never owned a computer with a solid state drive in it. Does that help at all with when you're recording stuff, to have a solid state drive versus a spinning hard drive?
It does. I mean, in general, if you can, you want to record the data onto an external drive, a second drive.
Yeah.
But a solid state drive is definitely, I think you could probably, with a solid state drive, you actually, maybe that adage of, recording to an external drive is kind of, might be not an issue anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so interface. Oh, I also wanted to bring up the one I always bring up. I've got one at home, which is I can't remember, the Apogee.
Apogee. I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah, I've got an Apogee one, a fairly old one that they gave me 5 or 6 years ago, and the thing just sounds so amazingly good. And there's nothing that my daughter and I have ever found that didn't work well through that. The built-in mic on that thing sounds amazingly good.
Yeah.
The converters sound great, but it's a fair statement to say Apogee makes some of the, there are esoteric, really expensive converters, but for the average guy on the street, Apogee's kind of like the Mercedes of converters.
It really is. It's a really, really good solid choice.
So, what does an Apogee 1 cost? Even the newer version, which I understand is really slick. Aren't those like $300?
I think they are. Yeah, I think they're about $300.
So that's got a built-in mic and great converter in it.
Something I want to take a minute out, because we're talking about prices, and I think one thing that's really important to understand is how pricing works. Because if you guys are on a budget, you obviously, and you have a certain amount of money to spend, you don't want to spend more money than you have to spend, right?
Right.
So there's this thing called MAP, which stands for minimum advertised price. And when you go on to, if you go onto Westlake Pro's website, or you go onto Sweetwater, or you go onto Guitar Center, 90% of the products are going to be on that site for the exact same price, right?
Okay.
And that's the MAP price.
Right.
Some of those products, Apogee being an example, we got to sell them at that price.
Right.
It means that we might be able to throw in a cable, or we might be able to throw in something, but we still have to charge that price. A lot of the stuff we don't. So then it becomes sort of a game of, how do you, Michael, you want to buy, this interface, and
Right.
it says $400 online, and you don't want to pay $400. So how do you get the price?
Well,
And depending upon the manufacturer, you might be able to have an add to cart discount on the site. If
what
somebody
kind of
somebody logs into an account,
oh, okay.
you might be able to chat. But the sure way to find out is to actually call a human being on the phone. And because a lot of manufacturers, they will say, like, the only way you can give a discount
Is verbally.
is in a human interaction.
Which I've got to say, one of the reasons that we've got the relationship with Westlake that we've got, and it all started with the guys with West LA back in the day. These guys are well known. Not 100%, but a huge percentage of the big rock stars that tour the country, they all go through LA at one point or another. And they know these guys. They've known them for decades, and they come to you because of that human interaction. I mean, they don't go to the big box stores. And yes, I am plugging them because you guys know me well enough to know I wouldn't plug. I don't get anything. I don't get. Have I ever gotten a free anything from you guys? That I can think of.
You
No.
might have. I don't know. No, I don't think so.
I haven't even gotten a free cable from you guys.
You know what? I'm
I've
going to
never
bring
asked
you a
for it.
cable next time I come.
I could have used a guitar stand at the rel. I did ask
That's
him
right.
for a guitar stand.
I was going to bring my own guitar stand from home, right?
We were about, 45 minutes before the open mic, and somebody said, we don't have guitar stands, and we're going to have to put these beautiful PRS guitars in their cases on the stage. And I said, somebody's going to step right through that thing. So I think my wife and I and my daughter jumped in the car. I asked Peter, and he said, man, I can bring you one of my own tomorrow.
Yeah.
So we ran out and bought a guitar stand and made it back in time. But anyway, the human interaction thing is a big deal.
It's a big deal. I mean, we just built we built 4 studios for Snoop just recently.
Wife? In a complex?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, does he have 4 houses?
It's insane too. Yeah. But, built a studio for Jessica Simpson recently. We built a studio for Ziggy Marley recently, and there is all of that. But part of it too is like if you want to save a couple bucks on a $200 interface that you're saving for, give us a call because
I forgot to do. I was going to do a solid for you today, and I forgot to do it. So let's mention it here. You guys are doing a Cyber Monday thing, right? And how is that still going on now?
There's like a pile of deals going on right now.
So what time tonight?
Until midnight. Midnight West Coast time.
All right. So when we're done with the show, you can go to westlakepro.com and take care of business on.
And there's actually, if you're interested, there actually is a chat window open. So if you have any questions, you can go right now while you watch this.
Yeah. Or watch a lot and then go. Yeah. But no, that's okay.
And ask a small question.
Okay, so now let's get down to the microphone. For the beginning setup, they want something good enough, and those starting people are going to come in 2 varieties. They're either going to be primarily an acoustic guitar player, or they're going to be a keyboard player. And in either case, they're probably going to do some vocal work, although they could be just doing instrumental cues. So what's a really good all-arounder microphone that's going to work great on vocals, great on acoustic guitar, maybe great on some hand drums?
Yeah, I'd say a large diaphragm condenser is the way to go. And it used to be like a few years ago when sort of China became ascendant.
Yes,
is there were some companies that that figured out how to make really decent microphones for what at the time was a little bit of money. Like companies like SE Electronics and Studio Projects. I think I had a pair of Studio Project mics, and in the early days of making Chinese mics. Well, now every manufacturer, has mics made in China, and like Audio Technica is a perfect example that have
really their entire line is made.
Well, no, but they have some really inexpensive mics that are really good value.
Like how inexpensive?
$129.
Wow.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, there is a Black Friday deal on the Audio Technica stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's like some pretty stupid deal going on.
I've never heard...
stupid deal.
Stupidly good.
Yeah.
I've never heard anybody say anything but good stuff about Audio Technica mics, and what is the 3340 that was kind of the flagship mic?
3040.
Or 3040, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever their
You might be right.
flagship early microphone
Yeah.
was, that I know that everybody I've ever known that has one of those, that's like one of the first three they pull out on anything.
Yeah.
It's like, going to try it on vocals, going to try it on a guitar, going to try it on whatever. But so, how much is this whole system? Let's assume that somebody's already got a laptop,
Yep.
and they really just need to buy the interface and the microphone.
And what's their budget?
Well, you tell me. And they're going to need monitors.
They're going to need monitors.
Yes, and let's talk about monitor
All right,
placement when
monitors.
we're done
All
with
right,
that.
again, yeah, monitors. There are a number. Same thing. There are, when I put together my first system, I bought the Alesis that everybody had at the time.
Yeah.
Was that Alesis power amp and the passive Alesis monitors, which were really inexpensive and really sounded like they were inexpensive.
Yeah.
Right now, JBL has a series, 300 series, 305 are, I think under 150 a monitor.
Wow.
And they're really, really decent.
Are those the ones with the 6-inch woofer on them?
Yeah, 5-inch woofer, I think.
Okay, and they're like the box is about this big, right?
And then the 308s, which are the bigger ones, are not that expensive.
I was blown away. I get nothing for this endorsement, and I want you guys to know I started out my career using JBL 4311s, which were a 12-inch three-way back in the day.
Yeah.
Everybody in the industry used them because the Yamaha NS10s, which are sitting behind me, hadn't been, maybe they were invented, but they weren't popular yet. And the 4311s really didn't sound that great, but everybody used them, so we all knew what they sounded like. Well, then I went to the Yamaha NS10s, and I thought all JBL products after that sounded like dog meat. Not that the NS10s are if you want a speaker that makes everything sound wonderful, buy the small tannoys. They sound amazingly good.
Yeah.
But they probably sound too good. The NS10s are pretty flat sounding, and you really have to work to make things sound pretty coming out of them, as many of you guys know. And I was not a fan of JBLs, and I went there to talk to them about sponsoring the Road Rally, I think in 2013 or 2014, and they took me into the showroom and played me those monitors. I was blown away.
They're amazing for the amount of money, right?
They were amazing at almost any price.
Yeah.
Yes, I was listening in a listening room that they set up, but they weren't going through an EQ. They were running them flat, and I was not just amazed, but like breathless at how good they sounded. And so it's the 5 inches are $150 a side. So
I think so. Yeah, about that.
All right.
Yeah.
So now let's assume somebody's going to invest $300-ish
Yeah.
to buy a pair of those. What can they do to not make them sound horrible when they put them in their home studio, which is probably on a tabletop or a desktop situation?
Well, first of all, there are, I think one of them is called Mopad. There are, sort of shocks. And I'm trying to think of what the technical name is, which I'm not coming up with.
Isolation things.
Isolation, yes,
Yeah.
Thank you, for monitors, which are really good investment. For $30,
right.
You've got a really,
Otherwise, your desktop is
Yeah.
going to vibrate and be, sympathetically resonating with your monitors and probably boost your bottom end.
And if you bought the monitors and you had to wait to spend the $30, I'd get like a couple mouse pads. Something that's going to absorb shock. That's going to put something between, because if the monitors are sitting right on the desk, the desk is vibrating with low frequency. And,
if you notice when you put your elbow on the desk and listen like that,
Yeah.
it sounds one way, and then you lift your elbow off and it sounds another way. Good chance you need isolators.
Yeah. There's an interesting product too, and it's called SonarWorks, that they came in and demonstrated it to us recently, and it's a speaker calibration software. So
Wow.
it basically, and there's a couple of companies that make it. Excuse me. And but basically, once you get your room set up to the best of your ability, it's a plug-in, and it basically figures out what's wrong with your room, and then sort of puts in an EQ on your recording software so your room sounds right. So what's coming out of the speakers sound right to you.
That's pretty heady stuff. Back in my day, back in the 70s, they would tune rooms and they had to have B&K microphones, and they would get out and they'd measure the triangle, just so you want your listening position to be equidistant from the monitors, should be equally as far apart as you are from the monitors. So it's
Yeah.
like a perfect. Is that called an isosceles triangle?
I guess if it's equilateral, if it's
Or equilateral.
yeah,
There you go.
yeah.
I wasn't good at geometry either. Algebra, geometry, trigonometry. Never got that far. Okay, so that's incredible.
And they actually sell. I mean, that system is like I think about $250, but for like I think in the neighborhood of like $69, something like that, you can get. They have these profiles done for different headphones. So they don't have it done for every headphone, but they have it done for the headphones that they feel are potentially something that you could mix on if you had to.
Okay.
And which includes some of the AKG and Audio-Technica headphones.
So it makes your headphones sound like monitors.
Sound flat. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's huge, especially
It's
for
really
people
cool.
working in an apartment or in a small home. You don't want to wake your spouse up or something when you work.
Yeah.
That's great.
I mean, the bottom line is that it's an incredible time. And the bottom line is you got no excuse.
Right.
The only excuse you have is if you're lazy, right?
Yeah.
Because it can be done. It can be done on the way cheap. It can be done within whatever budget that you have.
Somebody giving you props saying, Peter helped me at last year's road rally that you burned a couple CDs for him. Thanks, Peter.
Awesome. I know
like I said, he's one of you guys. What's that product called again?
SonarWorks, and we have that also.
I'm quite amazed because I would think that, again, back in my day, I mean, like when I worked at Criteria and Tom Dowd, who we'll talk about later, would come in and be the guinea pig in a new room, let's say. We had an engineer named Don Gaiman who was a very smart guy, and he would bring in a system, I can't remember the name of it, and spend the whole day with white noise and pink noise, measuring all the early reflections, late reflections, and tuning the room. And that was like you needed two smart people and a very expensive piece of gear to do it. So this thing does it for $250, and it actually works.
Well, it's not going to exactly turn your bedroom into Skywalker Ranch, but but nevertheless, I mean, I'll tell you the truth. I'm mixing a project right now. I had a singer-songwriter who came from Germany in September, and I'm just finishing up the mixes. And I moved about 4 months ago, and I had a studio in back of my house, my old house. I have nothing in my new house yet.
Okay.
So I'm set up in like the breakfast nook of my kitchen. I'm mixing. And I've put up I have a bunch of acoustic panels up.
And I'm looking, he's got a wedding ring on. I'm amazed.
That's right. It's not going over that well, trust me. But anyway, it's a total guerrilla setup, and and if you take a little time to think about it and do a little just tune it the best you can make it work.
But this stuff, you know what I mean? I mean, you've been around it now, and you can go to work and ask people. And just know, for those of you who haven't done it before, set up a simple system. It really isn't that hard, but there are a few basic rules, like don't push a pair of monitors
up against the wall.
Against the wall. If you've got a couple of old blankets or moving blankets or pillows that you can stuff down by your feet, bass builds up underneath that surface. So if you can stick stuff under there that will soak up some of that bass, you'll get a better idea. Okay, so the system we're talking about, let's say you spend $350 for the monitors with tax, and $300 for the interface.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're looking at $650. And what did you say for the microphone?
I'd say if you had to, you could spend like $120, $130 for a pretty decent.
Yeah, surprisingly good for what it costs microphone.
Yeah. And although as we said before, it's like the microphone is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So that's the place you might want to put a little bit extra dough. If it was like microphone or monitor, you might even want to work on headphones for a little while and spend a little bit more dough on the microphone.
I know people are kind of loath to work on headphones, but the bottom line is you can mix on headphones. You've just got to listen back to your mixes on some other system.
Very true.
To check it, because
absolutely.
Headphones will make them sound pretty.
Yeah.
And then you take it elsewhere and you realize that there's just like too little bottom end, because the headphones, you get the proximity effect of them being smashed up against your ears. All right, so we're looking at somewhere around under $1,000.
Yeah.
assuming that you've got the laptop. Or so for $1,000, I mean, it's not nothing, but it ain't a
Yeah.
lot.
And if $1,000 is impossible to do, you can still get started. I mean, I personally think
Yeah.
the key is to just get started. Get started. If you have to, start with GarageBand and use the microphone on your iPad, get started. Don't make an excuse of like I can't afford this stuff that they're talking about. Get started. Right?
If nothing else, yeah, use first of all GarageBand. You guys know I'm a fan of GarageBand. It gives you a lot for no money. And it's a great way to learn because anything you learn on GarageBand is going to translate in one way or another to using Pro Tools. You're going to learn how to edit. You're going to learn how to loop. You're going to learn, the basics of digital recording on. The other thing about microphones is people tend to want to go buy. Look, we'd all love to drive a Ferrari.
Yeah.
Everybody wants whatever expensive car. But you don't need a $3,000 Neumann microphone to do this anymore.
That's right. No, you really don't. I mean, it's nice if you have the dough.
Right.
They're beautiful.
Yeah.
They
will sound consistently wonderful which is one of the problems that people have with Chinese manufactured stuff, is the quality control. And I've heard that, 3 of the same microphones manufactured in China that sounded very different. One sounded horrible, one sounded okay, and another one sounded amazingly good.
Yeah.
So I think that the quality control issues have been debugged to some extent over the last 5 years probably. And I'm sure that some of the bigger manufacturers like AT or AKG, if they're manufacturing stuff in China, they're not letting crap go out the door because it would ruin their brand.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, so there's your basic home setup. And I'd like to interject that we hear stuff get placed in TV shows where it blows my mind. It sounds like somebody actually did it in GarageBand with nothing more than the built-in mic on the laptop. And it sounds that way because it's like indie folk or indie singer-songwriter stuff. And it's really intended to be kind of lo-fi because it adds to the mood and the ambiance of what they're doing. That can work. And once again, just even by using that stuff, at least you're learning how to use it.
Exactly. I mean, that to me is just so the key to things. It's just to get you want to be in the game, you got to get in the game.
Yeah.
You can't make excuses. I personally, I have a, it kind of pushes my button because I've worked over the last few years with a couple of artists that are just spectacular. I mean, all they would really need to do is show up. And they'd have, they might not be Adele, they might not have that career, but they'd have a career.
Wow.
And for whatever reason, they couldn't show up. It's like, one who recorded this, we recorded a 6-song EP, I think, and she's, she actually, spent a lot of money recording it. And it was phenomenal. And, we got it done, we got it mixed, we got it mastered, and she started to have doubts, self-doubt about this, self-doubt about that, and 2 years later,
still wasn't done.
No, and I think she actually re-recorded a couple of the songs recently, and
Yeah.
But that's the thing. It's like put it out there. It's never going to be perfect.
I'm looking over there at my little taxi cab with the cow in it.
Yeah.
The bumper sticker by the rear wheel. Our members have a saying, which is write, submit, forget, and repeat.
Yeah, exactly.
Because,
and get the feedback. If if it sucks, it doesn't matter. Because if you got somebody to hear it and tell you that it sucks, you can go back with something better, and they're going to be impressed. Right?
Yeah. You only get better by making mistakes.
Yeah.
I've never met anybody who came out of their mommy's belly amazing. They may have been born with a gift, but they had to develop the gift. Okay, let's move on to the intermediate studio, which I'm guessing these guys watching the show, these are our core members. A lot of them are. And I would imagine that these guys would probably fall into the intermediate category, which is they've probably spent $3,500 to $10,000 on their studio. So if that was your budget, if you already knew how to use Pro Tools, and you're comfortable in the digital environment, and you've got your $200 microphone, your $200 interface, and your $350 speakers, and you've become very good at that. And by the way, so far we haven't even talked about any virtual instruments, which we can save for later. We're
Yeah.
talking studio setup now
Yeah.
and thinking of recording acoustic instruments and vocals. So you're ready, you've graduated, and you're ready to move on. How do you move on? What do you buy?
All right. I mean, I'd look at a good mic, you know. And actually, two really good companies for the money were both with us at the Taxi Rally,
Right.
which Peluso, who just came out with a U87, which sounds phenomenal. U87 clone. They have U47 clone, a 251 type, you know, and they're sort of in the, I don't know, you know, $700-800,
Right.
$1,000 neighborhood.
Does the
Yeah.
251 sound like a 251?
Does it sound like a
Well.
$10,000 251? Almost.
Wow.
Oh, you know,
Okay.
almost.
Yeah, that's like me asking if an
Yeah.
1176 plug-in sounds like an 1176. No, not
Yeah.
exactly, but it still sounds really damn good.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other is Mojave,
Yeah.
which our buddy Dusty Wakeman, who's a really cool producer, former studio owner who now runs Mojave Microphones.
Dusty, you got to know, Dusty's one of the great guys of all time. He and I've played golf once or twice, and we keep threatening to do it
Cool.
again. So
Yeah.
if Dusty's making it, you know, again, he's one of us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, he's a very cool guy, and makes some really nice mics. And they actually are headed into the stratosphere a little bit. Their newest one, which I can't remember the model, but it's around 3,000.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful mic. But they, again, they start, this stuff around 700, I think, on up, and they make some fantastic mics for the money.
Here's a tough question for you. Okay, you're moving into that intermediate level, and you've got $1,000 to play with. Would you personally buy $1,000 worth of microphone or two $500 microphones?
That would depend upon what I wanted to do, right?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it really depends upon what you want to do. I would say, a lot of people, and we haven't touched on virtual instruments,
Right.
but the really sort of like moment of clarity that I've had in the last couple of weeks mixing this project, and I had like a lot of outboard gear. I would go through outboard equalizers when I was mixing. I'd go through not a ton of stuff, but still stuff,
Mm-hmm.
And I've realized in doing this project I'm working on right now that you can do it in the box,
Yeah.
And so if you're a singer-songwriter and your instrument is keyboards, you might need one vocal mic, period.
Yep.
End of discussion, right?
Yeah.
And if you
An acoustic guitar player.
if you're an acoustic guitar player,
Right.
then maybe you want to have a little bit different flavor than what your vocal mic could be.
And frankly, I'm kind of running through a list of microphones that I'm familiar with. So many of them are actually great for acoustic guitars and vocals that you could probably make that choice, an all-arounder too.
Yeah.
Gosh, like the AT mics that I've heard,
Yeah.
I'd use those all day long on an acoustic guitar or a vocal, assuming it's kind of a normal vocal, not somebody who's like really sibilant or somebody,
Yeah.
for a wispy female voice, you might want to use a different mic than you'd use for a gravelly guy voice.
And then if if you want to record, the shakers that were sold at the Taxi Rally,
Yeah.
that might be a different mic,
Do you guys let stuff go out? Like if somebody lives locally, can somebody like pay for a mic, try it for a weekend and return? Do you have demo loan versions?
We
of
do have
stuff?
demos. It depends upon, what we have, what's in, what's out. But yeah, we do.
Because that would be
We
a
do.
smart way to go. Because a lot of times, look, I'm not a fan of some of the websites where everybody's a friggin' expert and they don't know. A lot of times they're
Yeah.
just parroting what they've heard from other
Absolutely.
people.
Absolutely.
And you could end up buying something. I bought my parents one of those grill thingies, like a panini maker that I kept seeing on TV. And all the reviews online for this thing had like 4.7 out of 5 stars. And I got them the thing and sent it to them for, I don't know, whatever holiday. And they called me up and said, "We're embarrassed to tell you this, but everything we make on this sucks." So, reviews
Yeah.
don't always count.
Yeah.
If they could have, they ended up taking it back, and Bed Bath and Beyond was really nice about that. But yeah, for a
That's what
microphone,
Bed Bath and Beyond is for.
yeah,
Take stuff back, right?
But for a microphone, you don't know until you try it on your voice in your room with your gear if it's really going to work. So that's nice that you guys do that.
No, we can, and we can also set up shootouts.
Right.
I mean, honestly, probably not going to get a salesperson to spend an hour shooting out $100 mics.
Right.
But that's just. But if you're interested in something that's you try to make a decision about a really serious piece of gear that you're making a big investment in, that we could definitely set something up.
One of the cool things about the people that come to the Road Rally, I told Peter this story years ago, back when we did the Road Rally at, not the Renaissance in Hollywood, the Renaissance near LAX. I remember that we had a Pro Tools mixing surface. I can't remember what it was called, but it was a $20,000 piece of gear. And one of our members actually bought that thing at the Road Rally for 20 grand. So you never know. I mean, look, we've got plastic surgeons that make a lot of money that love to do music, and they can afford a $20,000 piece of gear.
Sure.
So Peter told me last year at the rally, they had and we don't have to mention the member's name or anything, but they made contact and met Peter at the rally. And then after the fact, they had you basically build out an entire studio, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you guys do packaging where you spend a lot of time with somebody and find out what their real needs are, and then design a system for them within their budget.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. No, as a matter of fact, the person who builds kind of the higher budget studios is this gentleman, Jerry Stecklin, who actually did design Skywalker Ranch.
Wow.
Yeah.
Does he have any credits?
I don't know. I'll have to ask him.
Holy crap. Okay, back to our intermediate studio now. So they've got a nice, like Pro Tools HD.
Yeah.
And let's say they're going to, drop $750 up to $3,000 on their microphone. What else? Monitors.
And monitors, sort of all the way up the chain, there are really good deals to be had. I mean, I have at home, I have Presonus mics, monitors. They're called Scepter, and I have like a Scepter 8 or 8-inch mics, and they are, I think, $1,600 for the pair. But sort of compared to monitors that cost three times that much.
Wow.
Presonus has some really,
and that was like. That's the street price, not the Peter I worked there price?
Yeah, that's the street price. Yeah. And they occasionally have deals. I mean, we actually had a deal on them at the Road Rally for the 5-inch ones, where I think he was buy one and get one free or something. So they were like really kind of, maybe $600 for the pair for the 5-inch.
I should have asked you this before the rally, and I should have asked you this before we went on camera, but at the Road Rally, do you find that people buy stuff that they can fit in their suitcase and take home easily? What is a taxi member? What do they mostly buy at the Road Rally?
They buy, people will buy headphones and so forth, I guess, to sort of do whatever they're going to do at the rally.
Interesting.
And the bigger stuff usually gets shipped home because, especially if somebody came from out of state, because then we'll ship it free and they don't have to pay any tax. If they take it at the rally, they have to pay California tax.
Right.
So the bigger stuff gets shipped, typically.
All right. So I'm trying to think what other stuff you sell at the rally. I mean, understand, they don't sell instruments. I wish you guys sold ukuleles. I think I might have had that conversation with you before, because that's the one thing we miss about having West LA there, is they sold a ton of ukuleles.
We'll just have to bring ukuleles next time.
Seriously, I remember... I can't remember his name. The unforgettable guy whose name I can't remember from West LA told me that was their biggest selling item.
Do you think ukuleleism has peaked? Or?
Everybody keeps thinking that it's going to, but it doesn't. I mean, watch TV and you'll see how many commercials, stupidly simple little instrumental things in commercials that are all not many uke-driven commercials. You would think, but for $100,
you think it could be like a space thing, as people are having to move into smaller apartments?
I don't know.
The,
You know what it is? It's a friendly, happy instrument, and
it is. It
commercials
is.
always want stuff that's emotionally upbeat, and it's pretty hard to get depressing on a uke. So, all right. So those monitors again that you got for your setup?
Those were the Prasanna Scepter. Focal has some great new monitors,
Yeah.
beautiful monitors. I mean, we have, everything from stuff that's, I think Mackie makes some pretty decent monitors that are like $100 a pair, if that's what your budget is. Up to, we in our back
Wow.
room right now, we have $60,000 pair of monitors from Ocean Way Studios, designed by Alan Sides. So we got a range.
I mean, do you even let people hear those? Because
Oh
afterwards,
yeah,
everything else would sound depressing, wouldn't it?
yeah. Well, I guess some people want to spend the 60 grand.
Wow. Okay, I got to ask, what did Snoop spend? What did Snoop get for his monitors?
I think some of that is still up in the air. He's
Yeah.
bought some, and I don't know the answer to that. God, somebody told me what he put in the main room, and I can't remember. There might have been ATC, which ATC are really,
Like big honking.
yeah.
Yeah.
ATC, I mean, they make a nice budget model for about, I don't know, 7 grand a pair.
You know who's back in business? You would know this better than I, but Keith Clowder from KRK.
Ah,
He's the guy that invented KRKs back in like 1986 or 87. I met him when I moved out here, and he eventually sold the company. But I got an email from him right before the road rally, like maybe the day before, saying he's back in business building a new monitor.
oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
there,
I didn't know that.
yeah, there's a guy who is passionate about his monitors. You know, he's not really a business guy; he's a monitor guy.
Yeah.
So I've got to say, whatever he builds is worth checking out. Keith was passionate about that stuff. Let's see.
What's going on?
I'm just seeing if anything interesting is going
Yeah.
by on the here. You commercials, and always wonder. Did one of my taxi friends write that? Probably.
Awesome.
Okay, so now for that person with the intermediate studio, they've probably treated their room to some extent. They're not going to put all that stuff on a desktop and put a little Sonex foam up on the
Yeah.
wall, call it a day.
Yeah.
Can you guesstimate? I know this is a tough question, but can you guesstimate what they might anticipate spending taking a 10 by 12 bedroom or that size of an area in a basement and treating it acoustically well enough that because you wouldn't want to take a $3,000 pair of monitors and
Yeah.
put it on a desktop. Right?
No, you're absolutely right. You're probably better off with the $300 monitors
Yeah.
and spending a couple thousand in room treatment.
So
But
are they going to spend $2,000 on room treatment or?
I think it's the type of thing where you can make a difference for $300.
Wow.
You can make a difference,
Yeah.
and you can pretty much go on from there.
And,
But yeah, if you have $2,000 or $3,000 to spend on your room, I think you're going to be really solid.
And what would you think is the biggest offender? That somebody who's graduated from beginner to intermediate and they want to have the room sound good enough that they can enjoy those Genelecs or whatever. Is it more about getting rid of early reflections? Is it more about trapping the bass? What are the most common offenders that
Well,
you?
I mean, I think the early reflections are kind of the low hanging fruit.
Yeah.
Because if basically it's early reflections being the first place that the sound will hit the ceiling and hit the walls as it's coming out of the monitors, and those are very easily treatable by making some sort of panel that you put up where those early reflections hit.
Right.
Bass is obviously not the low hanging fruit because it's just really expensive to deal with, and it takes a lot of mass and a lot of stuff. So, like
Do tube traps work?
yeah, I mean,
I've
yeah.
only been in a couple of rooms that had them, and the people who owned them said, "Yeah, they solved the problem." Those are things look like they're like almost on a Christmas tree stand, and they stand in the corner and they're round. They're like the circumference of a coffee can, and they stand 4 feet high or something.
Yeah. It's just, all of that stuff works, and it's just a matter of finding somebody who does a good job of making them, and also maybe getting a little help. And they're actually, like these designers, sort of like robots, for a couple. I think Prime Acoustics and maybe Orlex has it too, which we sell both. Where you put in the dimensions of the room and they'll spit out, all right, you want to spend $1,000? Here's what our recommendation is.
Nice.
And and it is. I mean, it's a lot more viable than to get one of these a guy who that's their expertise to even walk in your room is going to maybe cost a big chunk of your budget.
John Storick, who's one of the preeminent studio designers on the planet Earth, I've known him since 75-ish. He does huge, I mean, anything from like arena-sized things down to home theaters for super-duper rich people to big rock star home studios. His first project was Electric Lady in New York for Jimi Hendrix.
Sweet.
So he's been doing it for a long time, and he's definitely like a Class A kind of guy. Years ago, when I started Taxi, I asked him, why don't you build a studio in a box, kind of like an A range, B range, and C range thing? And he said, because there are no two situations that would ever call for the same treatment. But now, entering in your room dimensions, is it a sheetrock room with a carpet floor, a sheetrock room with a wood floor, all that stuff, and being able to have a robot or computer tell you what you need?
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So what else have we missed in our intermediate room? We've talked microphones, monitors. We already know we've got Pro Tools HD. Outboard gear or plugins. Because now we're not using the built-in stuff necessarily on Pro Tools, which I understand from a lot of people sounds really, really good. It's kind of like if you've got an SSL console with the built-in limiters and noise gates in every channel, that stuff sounds amazingly good. Well, do you really need, some esoteric tube, whatever?
I would say, that there's a lot more important things to buy than outboard gear right now. I mean, obviously.
What are they?
Well, just what we've been talking about tuning your room and great monitors and microphones. I guess microphones outboard gear, but I mean, as far as like actual physical compressors and EQs, I would say that's somewhat down the list.
Okay.
I still usually will take my mixes out to an SSL type compressor. I have an Allen Smart. And I will use that, but you don't have to. The plugins become better and better and better. And when Pro Tools 11 came out, I was like taking stems of my mixes out into a summing box, an analog summing box. And the summing box was like an expensive box. It was like a $4,000 box.
Wow.
And I listened to, I did an experiment, and I took a mix that I'd done, and I did it totally internally when Pro Tools 11 came out. And I was like, it wasn't the same, but it also was really good. And I decided I sold the summing box.
Wow. It wasn't $4,000 better with it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I thought, like, you know what? This summing box isn't going to be worth $4,000, in a year. I
know an A-list mastering engineer in Los Angeles, and no, it's not Hans de Klein, who is at the Red Rally, but another guy who is, top of the line guy. And I was there with a taxi band that was getting something mastered for a major label. And they invited me to come to the mastering session. I really felt like I didn't belong there, but I went along for the ride. And when everybody left the room, the mastering engineer said to me, I know who you are, that you worked at Criteria and everything. He said, can I let you in on a little secret? I said, sure. He said, can't tell anybody this, okay? Yeah. All right. So I'm not going to mention his name. But his secret was he had an old, was it Ampex that made the closed loop tape machine?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, not Ampeg, but I think it was actually
Ampex. Yeah.
Yeah. So he just went in and out of that machine and never hit tape. He would He would take his 2-mix out of his console.
Yeah.
And feed it right into the input side of that tape machine, let it go through the input electronics, and then just go right back out. And it was amazing when you went to, in or out and A beat it. Yeah. That machine sounded so good that's why everybody went, oh, your mastering sounds so amazing. It was just the sound of that machine.
Wow.
And that machine was already 25 years old by the time he was using it for that. So
And
you
that
never
machine's
know.
probably been modeled for some plug-in at this point.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. It was amazing. It was like anybody off the street could have heard the difference. It sounded just like honey dripping.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I want to hear from you guys. How many of you guys have between $3,500 and $10,000 invested in studio gear? Give me a +1 if you would fall into that category.
Or a +2 if it's more.
Yeah. Okay, so +1 if you're between 3,500 and 10 grand, +2 if you're 10 grand or over, and send your address. I'm kidding. Don't send your address. I need to start writing down some questions I see floating by.
+1, +1, +1, +1. +1, +2. Aha. Sweet. Wow.
All right, so like I guessed,
Yeah.
most of the people watching the show, these are intermediates or more than intermediates.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. Wow. Look at that. We're definitely talking to the right people.
Yeah. That's really cool.
All right. Well, obviously, when you've got questions...
+1 unless you're talking about plugins.
All right.
Yeah, plugins count.
Yeah. Difference between Pro Tools and Logic.
All right. I'll go for that one. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Difference between Pro Tools and Logic Pro X.
All right. First of all, Logic Pro X is an unbelievable value, right? I mean, it's a really robust.
I don't know. I'm taking
it's,
your word
you know,
for
it's a robust recording package. It comes with a bunch of plugins. It comes with it now comes with Alchemy, which is one of my favorite soft synths. Apple bought it, which is it. Alchemy itself is worth more than the $200 that Logic costs. You know.
Wow.
So, having said that, I'm a Pro Tools guy, and part of the reason is that's what I learned, and I'm really pretty good at it. But the major reason is that if I want my session to be portable, I know that I can pretty much take it anywhere, and I don't have to jump through any hoops to convert the session. I can just take it to another studio. I can record drums. I can, if I want to get, if you wanted to get drums done online and you have the session going, you most likely can send the Pro Tools session to the drummer that you're working with online. And that in itself is, again, if you're in that part of the game, I think at a certain level you kind of have to have Pro Tools. Now, having said that, too, I think that, I own a few DAWs. I use Ableton Live pretty regularly. I think Persona Studio One is really cool. It's got some really unique stuff. And, and so I think in a perfect world, you might want to consider, having a workflow where you can move between DAWs. I think it's fairly universally accepted that Pro Tools is the best platform to mix on.
Why?
It's just that, well, to me, it's the way it's set up. It just makes sense.
Okay.
It makes sense, and it has a number of tools that I've gotten used to. And then again, this is my interface with it. But there's a number of tools that I really rely on to as in my workflow of making sure I can do my best to do the mix that Pro Tools has that the other DAWs don't have. Yeah.
My 15-year-old daughter said to me on Saturday night, she was watching, I just bought my first new phone in like 6 years last June, and it's a Samsung Galaxy S6 Edge. So it's a pretty nice phone. And my daughter said, "Dad, when you use your phone, you and Mom both do this." And she said, "It's all about that." So I realized that I'm even old school in the way I touch my phone because old
Yeah,
habits die hard. I'm a guy who's used to doing punch-ins on an MCI tape machine's remote where you go boom, and you just like really had to whack that record button to make sure
yeah.
that you got in or out in time. Um, what do you think about surfaces? Like if I someday I'm gonna sell taxi and retire and go back to just making records for fun because
Nice.
it's what I love. I feel like I'm flying an F-16
Yeah,
when I do it, and I love doing it. I do miss it from time to time, and I saw the Steven Slate thing. I can't remember what it's called,
the
but
Raven.
yeah.
Yeah,
Um, I mean, it basically looks like the topography of an analog console that has all the functionality of the
yeah,
digital world.
yeah.
Are those things catching on, not just his product, but any others like it? Or do I can't see me. I watch Rob Shirelli, who's probably my closest friend, making records, big, huge records for, like mega stars. And he uses a trackball.
Yeah,
And it's
yeah.
like, how the hell can you mix with, your fingers like that?
Andrew Sheps is mixing with a mouse right now.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like,
But I mean, again, it's all your workflow and also sort of how tweaky you get about stuff. And I mean, I think that like if you listen to popular music, especially stuff that's sort of veers towards electronica,
yeah,
there's some real work that goes into the production of that, and that work is very much in the digital domain, and it would definitely lend itself to more than a mouse. It really, if you learned your way around some sort of surface, like the Slate Raven is really cool. They just came out with a new model where they cut the price. It's $1,000, $999 for like, what you could spend the same amount on that size Apple monitor.
yeah.
You know, um, the Avid makes the S3, which is 5,000. Also, where you can literally, you have 16 channels, but you also can take, say, a plugin and like spread the parameters of the plugins over those 16 channels. So now you can get in there and just sort of tweak, the parameters of the plugin, which, again, you hear that technology all over popular music today,
Yeah.
right? You know,
I'm amazed that people will use 8 or 10 kick drums all combined and layered.
yeah, yeah.
Back in my day, you moved the mic in or out of the kick drum, and you compressed it or you EQ'd it, and that was about it.
Avid has a really cool product coming out it's supposed to be January, I think. It's called, it's a dock. And essentially what it is the center section, the controller section from the S6 console, which is a console that, again, it's a control surface, but it ranges between like 40 grand up to pretty much sky's the limit. And it's sort of the controller section of that, and then you put an iPad in it, and you can do a lot of the same controller, stuff that we're talking about,
Yeah.
that the Slate does and the S3 does for, a total of about $1,000 plus the iPad.
Is there any way to daisy chain the iPad so that if you wanted 24 faders laid
That's a
out in front of
really
you?
interesting question, and I think that the answer is no, but I would imagine eventually it
See,
probably is.
I'm a guy that wants to reach for fader 18
Yeah.
over there
Yeah.
just because that's how I learned. I don't know. I guess you could teach an old dog.
I mean,
new tricks.
that's really interesting. That's kind of a real factor in console design today, and the Avid S6, was designed basically with the idea of like, all right, you're sitting here, and you want to be able to reach everything. So how do we put this all in a package that you can reach without sliding over to the side?
Right.
And that makes sense.
It
It's
was-
not as impressive to look at,
Right. It was. I remember there was a guy. My studio in Fort Lauderdale was about a mile away from MCI, which made big consoles and tape machines back in the day. Not quite Neve quality, but it was a big manufacturer.
Yeah.
So I got to be the guinea pig whenever they came out with like a new transformer. They'd put one on every one of my channels, or a new mic pre. They'd come over and drop them in. And I remember at one of their techs that they flew around the world to do installs and repairs. His name was Greg Lamping, now living in Costa Rica, smart guy. And Greg said to me, the day is going to come where a recording console will fit in a suitcase, and channel 1 will be channel 1 or channel 18 or whatever you want it to be.
Yeah.
And that you could have one equalizer and be able to assign it to any channel. And my head almost exploded from trying to wrap my brain around that because I was so used to just reaching for stuff.
Yeah.
And I don't know. We'll see someday.
It's funny. I was actually having a conversation with somebody the other day. If you look at like some of the science fiction writers who wrote about,
Right.
like future
Yeah.
scenarios, which a lot of the stuff they'd get right. But the one thing that nobody got right is like how much power could be in something this size.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even Star Trek, the communicators were bigger than this.
Yeah.
Right?
I was in Chicago the other day, and I was with my dad. He's 91 years old and still very with it, but he's got a very basic flip phone. His vision's not so good, so he can't really use, one of these guys. But he asked me some question, and I went, "Where's the closest TGI Fridays?"
TGI Fridays is at 5919 Canoga Avenue, Woodland Hills.
And my dad was just like amazed by that.
Yeah.
And I said, "Dad, there's as much computing power," because my dad does have an iMac, a fairly large, fairly modern iMac desktop at home. And I said, "There's as much computing power in this phone as there is in your computer."
Yeah.
I really, truly thought Dad's head was going to explode.
Yeah.
Okay, now let's move on to, you're going to drop $10,000 to $100,000. At this point, the assumption is that you're very skilled and you really know what you're doing as far as using your gear.
Yeah.
What does that person need to consider? I don't even know if we need to address it, because if they're spending that, well, no, you know what?
Yeah.
They could be that doctor, plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills that has the money but not the knowledge. So let's go with that person. Let's assume that we've got somebody who's financially well off and is a high-end prosumer. What are they looking at getting into?
I mean, I guess I'd look at some sort of console,
Why? Why a physical console like the SSLs or whatever that are price range $30,000 to $100,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I know that would be my reflex, because I want to touch faders and reach for stuff. But what are some of your favorites?
There's definitely something, to be said for that. Is still being able to put, to have the tactile connection to it.
What's the
and also just as far as workflow too, is if you have all of the EQs in front of you, like one of the things that that is frustrating to me, but it's still basically the way I've worked in recent days is you have to figure out, let's see, all right, I put snare drum over here and this preamp, and then I put it through this compressor over here, and it's kind of this, as you're going through the session, it can be a little discombobulating.
You're saying if you...
And, you tape it up, you mark what's where and everything, but still, to have everything in a central place where you can really put your hands on it right away. You wanted to put up a little 2K on that acoustic guitar, it's right there. You have to go find, where's that EQ I was using,
But isn't that most of that's handled in the box anyway? It's all in memory. So literally, you could go back to, a session that you did 9 months ago in Pro Tools and just go, "Oh, I remember I love that acoustic guitar sound I got on Peter Malick," and find that guitar sound and just, boom, there it is.
Well, I hear what you're saying,
And that's from an old analog guy.
And I don't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I think there's still a certain... one of the things that I run into in mixing, especially some stuff that gets sent to me, is there's just tons of noise. And digital, one of the things about digital versus analog is it's really good at reproducing what comes in, which includes all of the low rumble, right?
You're talking room rumble?
And
Okay.
Yeah, and when you're recording in a less than perfect environment, and now you have 20, 30, 40 tracks.
Yeah.
And it's all building up, and it's a digital mess,
And that's because they didn't learn maybe rule number 1, or certainly recording 101, which is, anytime you're recording anything, doesn't need bottom end, use a high pass filter.
Yeah.
Because if
you have to have a high pass filter in order to use a high pass filter, right? So so there are things that hardware isn't totally obsolete yet, right?
And some of it is smoke and mirrors. You would know this better than I in today's environment. But for the guys that are spending the bigger bucks, they've got clients most likely. It may not be just for them. and clients still get excited when they walk into a room and see bells, whistles, lights, and a mixing surface, right?
That's right. No, that's absolutely right. I mean, if you have a commercial studio and somebody showed up and you have a beautiful tracking room and your control room is like, you know, a Pro Tools rig on a little computer desk.
Yeah.
You know.
That's what Shirelli makes records on. Everything is done in the box. He's got a few pieces of outboard. He rarely uses them. He does have, some incredibly expensive old compressor. I can't remember what it is, but it's like the price of a good used car. But yeah, he uses his trackball and a beefy Mac, and he does it on a desk.
Yeah.
With a pair of NS10s or whatever.
Yeah.
And it is, the guy's an A-list mixer. But he rarely has clients come over.
Yeah.
He gets whatever he gets, $2,500, $3,500 a mix, and people send him Pro Tools sessions. The one thing that amazes me is how much detail goes into fixes nowadays because you can. And that's a world that you live in that I never did. It's being able to tweak every note of everything everywhere so people will get that ridiculously refined.
I know.
All right, let's move on to some questions.
Yes.
It's the large console thing. It definitely matters. And the funny thing is, people who are in the know probably know that it's overkill. But it's like putting chrome wheels on a Ferrari. You already got the Ferrari. You might as well put the chrome wheels on it. All right. Come on, guys. Let's have some questions.
Check your Facebook messages.
Now we're talking about where people live. Okay, so while we're waiting for questions to come in, because there is about a 20-second lag, I want to remind you guys that before today's show is over, we are giving away, which I really appreciate you doing that, because he had to make some phone calls. Is it pronounced Papin? Rob Papin punch. Tell them what the punch is, because I'd never heard of it until I went online and checked it out.
Well, let me tell you about Rob Papin in general, and I had been unfamiliar. I mean, I'd seen the products and stuff, but I'd never really used them. And the Rob Papin rep, sort of, gave me a bunch of stuff to try out, and it's just really, really impressive.
And you get to take this stuff home and play with it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it's software, so yes, it's a bunch of ones and zeros. Yeah. And but it's definitely virtual instruments. Some of them are like drum synthesizers. Some of them are VIs like keyboard, sounds. There's a guitar one that's really cool, but they're really current instruments. They're current sounding, and they're very like the dynamic spectrum of a lot of the sounds are very detailed, so that they really can sit well in a mix, and they it's kind of the to me it's. He's really got his finger on the pulse of what stuff sounds like today that's being played.
It's critically important. The members have heard me go on and on about this, but we hear guys and gals, people, that submit stuff to Taxi, and we all scratch our heads going, this is a very skilled composer. This person really knows what they're doing compositionally, but their strings sound like they're 15-year-old strings. I mean, they're just laughably out of date. And there's really... strings and horns in particular are hard because of all the articulations and stuff you have to do, but drums, there's no excuse.
No, that's true. And even I mean, you can really get some pretty amazing sounds, in the box at this point, right? And so anyway, I would look. Anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying I would look at the Rob Papin stuff. It's really cool. And if you want to segue into the other. Which is Isotope.
Oh yeah, the mastering software.
Yeah, Ozone 6. All right,
7.
Yeah, I keep saying that. All right, Ozone 7. So
I'm surprised I got it right.
Michael asked me. He said we wanted to talk a little bit about if you wanted to master at home,
Right.
what was the question?
Well, look, it's an unanswerable answer, sadly, but look, people nowadays at music libraries, they're starting to say, I want the stuff mastered.
Yeah.
So people are wanting to run out and buy mastering software, and everybody's got an opinion as to what the latest greatest is. And of course, it's usually what they just bought, and they love it because they bought it. And they may have purchased it because they went on a forum somewhere, and everybody says, yeah, it's the best, I love it, it's great. You don't know until it's in your hands. And what is great for mastering one type of music may not be ideal for mastering another type of music. I wouldn't use the same mastering software for operatic stuff or orchestral stuff as I would for hip hop. So ozone is one that probably comes up most frequently. And I did hear one person say something really disparaging, which I can't remember now, but ozone in particular, they went, oh, everybody uses it, but I wouldn't. But that's one guy's opinion.
Well,
So what's your take on ozone?
My take is that if you want to try to do mastering at home, I'd buy a copy of ozone. I mean, it's that simple. I mean, Isotope's a fascinating company because I actually got, I think, version 1 of their stuff, and that was at least 10 years ago at the NAMM show. And the original software that they did, it was Ozone and this thing called Spectron, which I think they don't really update anymore, and Trash, the guitar effect plugin. I think that those were the 3 that they had at the time. And they were such ambitious products that they literally wouldn't run on the computers at the time. I mean, they would crash my Mac, and I had like a fairly robust Mac at the time.
Wow.
And and so for the first couple of years, I didn't use the Isotope stuff that I had, and then finally the technology sort of caught up to their technology,
Right.
And they've really worked really hard developing this product, and it's I think it's just amazingly impressive. And
it's how do you train your ears to use it though? Because that's the thing. It's kind of like, I fly remote control airplanes, so I understand a lot of stuff about control surfaces and the physics of flight and all that stuff. You would not want to put me in the seat of a real F-16.
Yeah.
So is this?
Well,
how do you train your ears to? First, you need to understand what mastering is and why you want to use it.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, they have a large number of presets that come with it. And there's actually a bunch of presets that Greg Kelby did.
Okay.
All right. And so what I would do is I'd get the software, and you can actually get a trial. I think you can get a 14-day free trial. And I'd bring up the Greg Kelby presets, and I would take a look at exactly what they're doing. It's a number of modules you'll see in the window, and you can look at, the EQ module and the dynamics module and the maximizer module, and you can see, what they're doing. And it'll take a little bit of time to wrap your head around it, but that's kind of the model. It's like, the presets are named really well, of like more presence, mellow, whatever, so they're good starting points. You pick
Are they musical at all? Like, do they have like a hip hop preset or a rock preset?
It's more of the ambience the sound you're trying to get.
Okay.
And I'd bring them up and listen to them and see what sounds good to you, and then really dig into how they put it together. And that's kind of a way to, I think it's a really effective way to sort of wrap your head around what you're trying to do. I mean, mastering is voodoo, man. I do it when I have to, but I feel like, I hope that I have the budget, or the artist has the budget to take it to somebody who has a room set up for mastering. But having said that, I do plenty of stuff myself, and I know you guys do plenty of stuff yourself because you have to.
Yeah.
And and a reasonably priced mastering engineer is like minimum $100 a track. There's a lot of like online services, but I would say you could probably do just as good a job yourself, if not better.
And frankly, with the online services, one thing I understand enough about mastering to know that if I'm a singer-songwriter, and I tend to do mostly singer-songwriter stuff, I wouldn't send one song to one service and another song to another service, because they're each going to treat. Yeah. It's a matter of taste. Yeah. It's the technical manifestation of somebody's taste. And the bottom line for mastering is really it's about making sure you don't have too much top, too much bottom, or that things don't sound have too much dynamic range. So
Yeah.
it's kind of the homogenization
Yeah.
of your stuff, which is, and I'm talking primarily in the world of music libraries. They don't want to have to pay to master it. So they don't want stuff that's going to be really dynamically spiky or too fat on the bottom, and they're going to have to remaster it. That's if they're spending $100 a track to do it, then their catalog of 20,000 pieces of music just got very expensive. So they want you to do it, and
Yeah.
it comes down to you being a good judge of, is this too fat on the bottom, too skinny on the top, too dynamically spiky? And then that all comes back to our basic home studio, which is how are your monitors set up, and what's your room like, and how much ear training do you have? So that leads me to an idea that you guys may already be doing, but I think a lot more people would use mastering software better if they really understood what mastering is. Do you guys do clinics, in-store clinics,
You know,
for
we
that kind of stuff?
well, we do. You know, we actually have. We just did a SSL sponsored a series we call. What do we call it? Anatomy of a Mix. Thank you.
Okay.
And we just had Daryl Thorpe in, who's 7-time Grammy winner. We have Greg Wells. I think is going to be coming in a couple of weeks.
Nice.
If you're not on our mailing list, you should definitely sign up at westlakepro.com. Because we're always doing free clinics. Having said that, they're really, really valuable. It's not an in-depth look at how to master, and it's something we've been looking at, But
I mean, even just understanding, having somebody just talk about the purpose of mastering. We had Ronan.
Chris Murphy.
Yeah, Ronan Chris Murphy is one of the great teachers of audio. Everybody loves the guy. He's very plain spoken. So, like, there's a guy that would be great for clinics because he can really explain mastering in a way that the average person gets it. Because my father's an oil painter. And if he starts speaking in terms of burnt umber or, it's like you and I wouldn't get that because it's over our heads. But if you said you wanted to make the sun a little more muted, that we would get. So Ronan is great at explaining.
There actually are some great resources about mastering on Isotope's site, and they're free.
Okay.
And Isotope has a very close relationship with this guy, Jonathan Weiner, who's a great mastering engineer out of Boston. He has a company called MWorks, and he's kind of been their consultant as far as developing Ozone. So there's some really serious brain power and serious ears behind the development of it. So I just think it's kind of a no-brainer. It's a really, really impressive product.
Here's a question. I have an AKG 214 powered through the console, meaning the 48 volts going to the microphone. Mm-hmm. Can I insert a DBX compressor in line and still pass power without damage?
Yeah, the compressor is going to be after the preamp.
Yeah.
So the preamp's powering the mic directly from the preamp, and the compressor will be after the preamp. So.
A couple of guys are recommending the Magic AB mastering software. Noteworthy. Are you familiar with that one?
I'm familiar with it. I've never used it. Isotope actually has a really interesting module where you can put in a reference track and it'll sort of read the sonic footprint of that reference track, and you can actually dial in that profile into the song that you're mastering. Dial it in as in if it were almost parallel processing. All right, I want it to be 10% more like the frequency response of the, of my reference track. And I think that's really, really cool.
Somebody has a 4-year-old, before this goes away, 4-year-old MacBook Pro, Pro Tools 9. Will his computer, a 4-year-old MacBook Pro, handle Pro Tools 10?
Well, how much memory is on it?
Yeah, he didn't say.
Yeah. I have a.
It didn't say.
First of all, I think the main thing to do is get the max memory. If it's 4 years old, I'm sure you can put at least 8 gigs in. So I would do that for starters. and I wouldn't go to 10. I'd go to 12 because with Pro Tools 11, it went to 64-bit, which means that the program can actually deal with over 4 gigabytes of random access memory of RAM, and that's kind of the power that's available to you now. It's like in Pro Tools 11 and 12.
Russell Landwehr wants to know, I have some I know my mixing room has some serious problems, but I think I'm putting out good mixes anyway. Is there anyone who could listen to a cross-section of my mixes and see if there is anything that stands out as a room problem?
I don't think by listening to your mixes that you necessarily would stand, you don't know. You could definitely have somebody tell you what the problems are, but whether those are room problems,
right,
or your taste versus the listener's taste, that's going to be a little tough. I think the best thing would be to one thing you could do is take your mixes into a well-tuned room and listen to it and see what it sounds like. Does it sound different than it sounds in your room, or bring in again, reference tracks that what they sound like, and how do those sound in your room? Are you hearing any difference?
And don't be afraid to use your car. I know that sounds ridiculous.
No, absolutely.
But your car speakers as well probably as your studio speakers, because you listen to music in your car all the time. I used to always listen to mixes in my car. Another one, another basic studio thing people always forget is making sure their speakers are wired in phase.
Yeah.
It seems so idiotically simple and obvious. Yet I can't tell you how many things I hear where you can tell the kick drum is coming out of both speakers and has no center whatsoever. Clearly something was wired out of phase, and it's usually the monitors. What are your thoughts on presets in compression?
Presets I think first that presets are an incredible learning tool. Just like as we were talking about Ozone.
Yeah.
If you look at some of the presets on some of the McDSP plugins or even the Avid plugins, there are some really, really aggressive settings that to me I would never go there automatically. But, to take a look at, all right, what exactly are they trying to do here? And what does it sound like? Can be an incredible, source of knowledge of, learning.
Tom Selden mentioned that Final Mix Bus Lite is great. I don't even know if you're aware of this, but Rob Shirelli has his own.
I know he does, yeah.
And the two that I've heard were remarkably good for practically
I've actually
no
been
money.
playing around with a prototype EQ that Rob has put together.
Cool.
That Westlake might be branding.
Nice.
And it's very nice. I've been using it on the mixes I've been working on the last week.
He just mentioned to me in an email earlier today, we've got some new stuff coming out, so that must be it, I'm guessing. Okay, look. How do you feel about Apogee Jam?
I think, all of the Apogee products are great. I mean, I think all of the Apogee products are great. $150 Apogee interface isn't a $4,000 interface, but it's not supposed to be, right?
Right.
But yeah.
Like I say, it's the BMW Mercedes.
It really is.
It's not the Rolls Royce, but very few people need the Rolls Royce.
Yeah, I've never heard anything that they put out that sounds bad.
Polly wants to know, what's the best way to test your room acoustics to identify problems to correct? What was the software you mentioned before?
SonarWorks.
SONAR works.
Yeah.
And WORKS as opposed to
and you could actually chat, the salespeople at WestlakePro.com right now, and they could hook you up with, I think I think SonarWorks might even offer some sort of trial where you can, for a really low price, you can buy a 14-day trial software with a calibration mic.
Wow. Oh, you know what? Let's talk about Tom Dowd let's do 2 minutes each. I just recently discovered that Peter and I both have some history with Tommy Dowd. Tom is, by anybody who's been in the industry for any amount of time, and is a real, studio rat, the real deal. Extra. Oh, you got one.
Yeah,
Okay.
good.
Tom Dowd was an eccentric genius with the kindest heart, the most giving personality, and made great sounding records. Aretha, Allman Brothers, Ray Charles, on and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I saw in your bio that you worked with him. So give me one good Tom Dowd story, and then I'll do one.
All right. Let's see if I can do this quickly enough. But yeah, he produced an album of this band I was in
Okay.
in the 70s. And working with him in the production of the album, I just really got a sense of like what a genius he was musically, because he would say the smallest thing, which would make the hugest difference.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I actually we had this one song that the label decided they were going to put out as a single, and we needed to cut it down. It was, I think, maybe a minute too long, and I was sort of the band guy who was sent to be in the studio with Tom.
Nice.
And basically, and it was my guitar solo, which was this extensive, never-ending guitar solo that needed to get cut, you know. So, but anyway, we sat there, and this is with a razor blade, right?
Yeah.
You know, this isn't, just on a computer screen.
Look, I'm the kind of guy that
he's
still
got
keeps
razor blades. My God,
I keep a razor blade around just in case a piece of quarter-inch ever walks in my room.
Homeland Security didn't see that.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we sat in the studio and tried these edits, and nothing worked, and nothing worked, and nothing worked, and nothing worked. And all of a sudden, you saw a light go off, and he's like, wait a minute. And he went out and he took the razor blade and he just chopped these two places, and it was like the places that he edited to me were just like so random.
Mm-hmm.
And he put it together and he taped it together, and it was genius.
Instantly better.
And I've thought for decades. I keep coming back to it, and it's like, where did he hear that from? That edit was just, where did he hear that from?
And understand, this is a guy that worked on the Manhattan Project. He was a nuclear physicist.
Yeah.
And a brilliant guy, yet I bet he didn't make you feel uncomfortable, right? It was just you and Tommy in the room.
No,
you were probably a little scared to death, but
yeah.
he made you feel like he was your big brother,
Yeah, no, he was an amazing individual.
I love that, man. I've got a very similar story, and I'll keep mine short as well. Eric Clapton found two guys sitting behind his house in the Bahamas, sitting on the beach, named Tom and Don, and they were clearly camped out there in a little tent, playing acoustic guitar and bongo drums, hoping that Clapton would stumble out of his house in Paradise Island in the Bahamas and discover them, which he did. And he got RSO Records to front the money to bring them to Criteria Studios in Miami, and had the Eric Clapton band playing behind these two guys, Tom and Don, a couple of pot-smoking beach bums. And everybody went to dinner, and Tom Dowd said to me, you want to learn how to make a good song great? And I went, sure. And he said, sit down at the tape machine. I want you to edit this. And there was coming out of the bridge going into the last chorus, there was a four-count drum turnaround with accents, kind of thing. And Tom said, take that out of there and move it up to the beginning of the song. And I'm sitting there going, rocking the tape over the head, scared to death, because I'd never cut a piece of tape in my life. And he's standing behind me being so patient, and I'm rocking and rocking. Finally marked the thing, because he yelled at me. He said, just mark the friggin' tape already. You can always put it back together, which was lesson number one, the law of reciprocity. No, reciprocity. Yeah. And so I finally cut this thing out. It probably took me 15 minutes to do what he would do in 5 or 10 seconds. And I moved it to the front of the song and then hit play. And white leaders going over the heads. And all of a sudden, boom, right into the song. It was pure genius. Yeah. Instantly, it went from being a damn good song to a friggin' great song.
That's exactly what he was. Yeah, he had that. He just was so musical.
Yeah.
You know?
Had like this X-ray vision that he could see things the person who wrote the song, the person who played the song might never see it in a lifetime. Tom Dowd could see 10 of those things in a minute.
Yeah.
It's just
and what an incredible human being, too.
Yeah. I was just going to say, a lovely man.
Yeah. I spoke to him on the phone like shortly before he passed.
Oh, man.
And I hadn't talked to him for, God, over 20 years.
Yeah.
And he was like, and this is like, he's suffering from emphysema, and it's not long before he passed away. And he got on the phone. It's like, oh, what about that what was her name, Jackie, that used to hang out with us in the studio, and it's just amazing.
Yeah. Never forgot anything. What was the name of the video? There was a documentary done, the language of music.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen the video, Google it, rent it, buy it, do whatever you have to do to get your hands on it. Tom Dowd, The Language of Music. Yeah. My wife walked in our bedroom one night and I had tears streaming down my cheeks. And she looked at the TV screen, sees a guy sitting behind a console shoving faders around. She goes, "You're crying over that?" And I said, "You just had to know the man."
Yeah.
Priceless human being.
Yeah. No,
all right, a couple more questions. Let's wrap it up. Okay, there's an entire book about Tom Dowd. Go buy it. Absolutely. Love these stories. What happened to your record that Tom worked on?
It was horrible. It was, I was in this band. The band was called James Montgomery Band. And we were signed to Capricorn Records. Our first record did okay. We were on like huge, we opened arenas. We opened our first record. We opened, we opened for Electric ELO in Toronto one night, and then Humble Pie in LA the next night. And it was just, it was like insane. The
big old head. We've made it. And
the record didn't really take off. And then we went to do our second record, and the band was kind of like fracturing. And like there were interesting writers in the band. The keyboard player was writing some stuff. I wrote a little stuff. The drummer was writing some stuff, but none of this, they didn't fit together. Yeah. And at any rate, Tom got hired to do the record. He did his best job. The material wasn't cohesive, and I asked him about it later when I sort of like when I left the band shortly after, and I got together with him and had lunch with him. I said, "So that record really wasn't that good. Why didn't you say something?" And he said, "I brought what I could to it, and I did the job, and I don't think that that any other record could have been made." And he was right. That was
his whole approach. His gestalt, if you will, about making records was, I'm not here to make a Tom Dowd record. I'm here to make your record be the best it can be.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Which he did.
Yeah, he would pick the best songs, like with an incredible, like just being it. You could watch a band run through 20 or 30 songs on acoustic guitar vocal, and he would pick the best, like boom, 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 and know right away, and arrange them on the fly. Just brilliant guy. You got to watch that movie.
Yeah.
Okay, I signed up for the SonarWorks speaker calibration trial. You need to buy their $49 measurement microphone.
Yeah. Yeah.
$49. Skip Starbucks for a week, Paulie. Again, I want to repeat. Look, I can't say enough good stuff. Peter's become a friend over time, but about Westlake Pro. Seriously, they're the real deal. These guys, it's not like a big box store where they're just trying to sell you something to make a commission. These guys are all like Peter. They're actual users. They've been around forever. Several of them, including George, I've known for probably 15 years. He's one of the owners. These guys live it and breathe it. So even if you don't live in Los Angeles, go to their website, chat them up on the, whatever you call that thing, what do you call it? You type in
the chat.
Okay. Just know that you're talking to guys like Peter. You're not talking to some young kid that just wants to make Robbie Hancock's giving you a +1. They're not about making commissions because sure, they'd love to make money. Everybody in business wants to, but they want you talking about them, going, those guys treated me fairly, squarely, and gave me a great price. So your thing ends at midnight tonight, which was total coincidence. He's not here because of that. Yeah. I asked him if he was available today, and George is probably pissed that I've got you here instead of at the store selling right now. Anyway, so WestlakePro.com, and you have your thing going till midnight LA time tonight is your Cyber Monday sale.
Cyber Monday stuff, yeah. Although some of it goes on. Go ahead and go to the site, and you can click on, there's a block on the homepage that says special deals, and you can take a peek at what's going on. Thank you, by the way. And my interface with this is I was a customer of Westlake's for 10 years before they sort of offered me this. I'm not a salesman there, but before they sort of offered me this wacky job that I do.
Yeah.
And and you know, I use them as a resource. If I didn't know what to do or needed a recommendation, you know, I trusted them to give me, you know, just, you know, not sell me what they had the biggest commission on that day.
Right.
Yeah. And
there's so much to be said for that. The ethic of the guys who worked at West LA, which was the reason that bands would wait till they got to LA to buy the expensive stuff, that same ethic lives on at Westlake Pro, and we're proud to have them. Look, they paid for your seats at the Road Rally, and you know, we don't just let any old sponsor in the door. We really try and match the sponsors to our people. So, all right. Thank you, gentlemen. Very useful.
cool.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up because that's one of the longest shows we've ever done, and there's so much more I could talk to you about. So we'll have to have you back. All right.
I'll come back.
And thank you
Anytime.
again for sponsoring the Road Rally.
My pleasure. Our pleasure.
Yeah. Thanks for watching the show, you guys. Hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving. Oh, giveaway. We've got a giveaway. See, I'm all about nice talking to you. I'm out of here. Going to go home and have dinner. All right. So
you're going to take the ozone plug in yourself, right?
That's right.
Oh, man.
I've actually got a Steven Slate drum thing sitting on my shelf over there that we tried to give away one day, and we blew it on the show, and I kept it for myself. Okay, so here's what I want you to do. Everybody who would like the ozone, type in a +1 now, and I'm going to run my finger up and down the chat room list, and we will send it to you. So let me know when you see a bunch of +1s, Peter.
I see a bunch of... now, wait a minute. Now that's somebody... All right.
Okay. Who did I hit? Everest Smile.
That wasn't a +1.
Oh, it wasn't a +1?
All right,
okay.
Here we go. Now we got it. All right.
That was Robbie Hancock?
Yep.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. So we're going to wait for those to chill. Holy crap. It's like watching a Wall Street ticker back in the old days.
Yeah. That's wild.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, slow down for a second. We're going to give away, now we're moving on to
Punch.
Rob Pappin Punch. So let's do +2s for that one. So as soon as I start to say...
lag, huh?
Yeah. +2s.
We still got +1s coming in.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
Right.
Okay, there's some +2s.
Oh, interesting. So there's probably different amounts of latency depending upon where you are.
Right.
So you have to wait a minute.
Yeah.
Right? Because you want to...
I see some people...
People in...
okay, try not to do like 5 of them.
Czechoslovakia as much of a chance as the ones in...
All right, now they're all
Calabasas.
+2s coming through. All right. Who did I hit?
Oh, God. Wait a minute. I'm going to put on glasses.
Okay.
I'm going to do it again. Sorry.
All right.
David something. Stop.
Oh, shit. I mean...
Let's see. Let's find it. Where is it?
It wasn't Danny Weber? It was David, definitely? Oh, there it is. David. I just saw him. David. Okay, you guys can stop typing your +2s because we've got a winner, and his name is David. We just got
SJH.
David SJH. Okay, so what I need Robbie and David SJH to do is each of you, and you got the Pappin Punch.
Yep.
And Robbie Hancock got the, where did it go? Ozone?
Ozone 7.
Okay, I need you guys to email Peter.
Yes.
And you will send it directly to them?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
you'll just give them a code and they can download it.
Peter M. at westlakepro.com.
Peter M. at westlakepro.com.
Yeah, I've got serial numbers and I'll give you instructions. And
awesome.
And they'll be there.
Again, don't forget their sale tonight. And just know that they're trustworthy guys.
And if you guys have any questions, email me. And I could, either answer myself or put you onto a salesperson who would be the appropriate match for you. And yeah.
All right. They're the good guys, and you'll see them back at the rally next year. And thank you all for watching. We will see you next week for another exciting episode of Taxi TV Live. Bye, you guys.